Hi, welcome back to Leon Reads, the channel where we share powerful insights and personal growth lessons through great books. What if everything we know about the universe and human origins is incomplete? Cosmosapiens challenges some of the biggest scientific theories from the Big Bang to Darwin's natural selection and asks the questions science still cannot answer. If you enjoy what you hear and interested to buy the book, we've included a link to the book in the description below. Now let's dive into a book that shakes the very foundation of our knowledge. Cosmosapiens 2015 offers a sweeping overview of the development of scientific theories from the origins of matter and the universe to the emergence of life on Earth and the evolution of human consciousness. For centuries, humanity has struggled with the fundamental questions: who are we? Why are we here? This book examines both the progress we have made and the obstacles that still prevent us from finding definitive answers. John Hans devoted more than 10 years to evaluating scientific theories about the evolution of humanity and the origins of the universe, resulting in the 700-plus page volume Cosmosapiens. He studied chemistry at the University of London, where he also served as the first undergraduate president of the Union. Beyond academia, Hans was the founding director of the UK government's Housing Cooperative Agency and served on committees appointed by the Ministers for Housing, Environment, and Industry. He is also a novelist, with 3 critically acclaimed works: Perestroika Christi, Darkness at Dawn, and Brutal Fantasies, published in 10 countries. At its heart, Cosmosapiens seeks to answer the oldest and deepest questions. Where do humans come from? Why do we exist? While traditional explanations often rely on myths, philosophies, or religious perspectives, Hans approaches the issue from a scientific standpoint. The book provides a comprehensive overview of how scientific thought has evolved, exploring the origins of matter and the universe, the emergence of life on Earth, the development of human consciousness. From the Big Bang Theory to the evolution of thought itself, Cosmosapiens takes readers on a fascinating intellectual journey through science's biggest questions in search of the most profound answers. Every culture has its own myths of origin. Science, however, explains the emergence of the universe through the Big Bang. So what do we really think about the origins of humanity? For much of human history, explanations have been rooted in myth. Even today, many still rely on religious accounts. 63% of Americans believe that the Bible is the literal word of God, and the majority of the world's 1.6 billion Muslims regard the Quran as absolute truth. Throughout history, people have developed fascinating myths to explain the origins of the cosmos and humankind. Most of these stories describe a chaotic world, often associated with water, from which a divine figure emerges to create order. For example, in ancient Egyptian mythology, from Heliopolis, the god Atum arose from the primordial waters, and through his seed the world was formed. Across Asia, myths tell of cosmic animals such as turtles that dive into the waters, retrieve a fragment of land, and expand it into the world. Other traditions across India, Europe, and the Pacific feature myths of a cosmic egg as the origin of all creation. Few myths suggest creation from absolute nothingness, and yet, this is precisely the explanation currently favored by science. The Big Bang Theory proposes that the universe, space, time, energy, and matter emerged from a singularity, followed by rapid expansion some 13.7 billion years ago, giving rise to the universe we know today. One of the main pieces of evidence is the concept of redshift. In 1929, astronomer Edwin Hubble discovered that light from distant galaxies appears redder the farther away they are, evidence that these galaxies are moving away from us and that the universe is expanding. However, the Big Bang model is not without its flaws. Though widely accepted, the Big Bang cannot fully explain the universe's origins. Even the redshift phenomenon, one of its cornerstones, is contested. Some astronomers argue that there may be alternative explanations for the red light we observe in distant galaxies. A major issue arises from the theorist's claim that the universe expanded in less than 10 to 35 seconds, from a singularity y-33 centimeters in diameter to something more than 10 billion times larger. To achieve such an expansion, the universe would have had to expand faster than the speed of light, something Einstein's theory of relativity states is impossible. But perhaps the greatest theoretical problem lies in the question of matter and energy. Where did they come from? Einstein's relativity tells us that matter and energy are equivalent. James Joule's 19th century principle of the conservation of energy states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, it can only change form. If true, then the universe must contain the same amount of energy now as when it first began. Yet according to the Big Bang, the universe arose from nothing. If that were the case, the total energy of the universe must equal 0. This, of course, contradicts our observations. So while the Big Bang Theory remains the dominant explanation, it leaves us with profound unanswered questions. How did matter and energy arise? Can something truly emerge from nothing? As Cosmosapiens argues, we are still far from a complete explanation, and with the mysteries of the universe unresolved, we turn to the next great question, the origin of life itself. Across the ages, humans have asked, does life exist on other planets or in distant galaxies? To this day, the question remains unanswered. Scientists, however, have identified 6 conditions necessary for life to emerge and endure, essential building blocks. Life requires complex molecules, and carbon is the only element capable of forming such structures. The presence of liquid water is also considered indispensable. Planetary size and mass. If a planet is too small, its gravity cannot hold water or sustain an atmosphere. If it is too large, it traps excessive gases, creating hostile conditions. Moderate temperature. If too hot, heat breaks down the bonds of complex molecules. If too cold, metabolic reactions take too long to generate life. An energy source. A planet needs a stable source of energy such as a star to maintain conditions suitable for life. Protection. An atmosphere or equivalent shield is needed to block lethal ultraviolet radiation. Stability over time. These conditions must remain steady long enough for complex molecules to organize into living systems. All 6 of these requirements are found on Earth, which may explain why, so far, it is the only known planet that hosts life. Since Galileo revealed that Earth is not the center of the universe and that other planets orbit the Sun, humans have speculated that life might exist elsewhere. Yet modern science has found that few places in the cosmos meet these strict conditions. Science struggles not only with how life arose, but also with what life is. Most of us intuitively know that a cat rubbing against our leg is alive, while a slice of toast on a plate is not. But distinguishing between life and non-life in precise terms is remarkably difficult. Scientists and philosophers have long debated the definition. 6 common characteristics are often cited: reproduction, evolution, adaptability, metabolism, organization, and complexity. Yet even these blur at the edges. In 2004, British science writer Philip Ball argued that trying to define life is pointless. According to him, no clear boundary separates life from non-life. He pointed to viruses as an example. Viruses reproduce, evolve, and show complexity, but they cannot function outside a host cell. They hijack the metabolism of living cells to survive. So, are viruses truly alive or not? Even more challenging is explaining how life emerged in the first place. Current estimates suggest life began on Earth around 3.5 billion years ago. The earliest life form is thought to have been a single-celled organism called Leuco, the last universal common ancestor. But how did lifeless matter become living matter? One popular hypothesis is the primordial soup theory. In this view, simple elements combined under sunlight or lightning, forming organic compounds. Over time, these gave rise to self-replicating molecules, which eventually evolved into living cells. Still, no one knows exactly how a single-celled organism could arise from such a mixture. Despite decades of research, the origin of life remains one of science's greatest unsolved puzzles. The journey from chemistry to biology, from inanimate matter to a living cell, still lacks a clear explanation. What we do know is that life began early in Earth's history, under just the right conditions. In the next stage of the story, we will explore how life developed once it gained a foothold on our planet. How did we evolve from single-celled organisms into intelligent beings? The best explanation science currently has is biological evolution, a process of gradual changes within organisms that give rise to new species. Charles Darwin was the first to argue that biological evolution occurs through natural selection, a mechanism in which individuals with the most advantageous traits are more likely to survive and reproduce, passing those traits to the next generation. The evidence for biological evolution is overwhelming. Fossils reveal transitional forms, for example, the skeletons that mark the gradual development of early horse-like creatures into modern horses. Living organisms also carry evolutionary clues. Penguins' wings are useless for flying today, yet their bone structure shows they are vestiges of ancestors that once flew. Biochemistry provides further evidence. All plants, animals, and bacteria share similar chemical structures and reactions. Genetics confirms that all living organisms share around 100 common genes. Yet despite this mountain of evidence, some argue that the origins of evolution cannot be explained by natural selection alone. Modern science has shown that additional factors influence evolution beyond Darwin's framework. For instance, environmental influences such as diet and stress can shape traits in both animals and humans. And these acquired characteristics can be passed down even without genetic changes. At Tel Aviv University, geneticists Eva Jablonka and Gal Raz compiled examples of traits inherited through non-genetic mechanisms. Their work suggests that evolutionary theory must expand to include influences beyond natural selection. If it is difficult to define life itself, it is even harder to define what makes humans different from other living beings. Scientists have pointed to specific traits: bipedalism, artistic creativity, but perhaps our truly unique feature is reflective consciousness. Consciousness means awareness of oneself, the environment, and other beings. Many animals show a degree of consciousness. But reflective consciousness awareness of the self as an individual is uniquely human. This ability drives us to ask questions like who are we? Where do we come from? Such questions have given rise to religion, philosophy, and science. Reflective consciousness also underpins human capacities such as reasoning, insight, imagination, creativity, abstraction, and morality. Another key difference lies in how humans learn. Primates mainly imitate their parents. Humans, however, rely on parental guidance for only the first few years, before entering schools, reading books, and learning far beyond survival skills. We study art, philosophy, and science. Moreover, humans create their own systems of self-education libraries, universities, the internet. This behavior sets us apart from all other animals. But the central question remains, how did we acquire this unique kind of consciousness? It is the defining human trait, and yet its origins remain one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of science. Reflective consciousness did not appear overnight. Instead, it developed gradually over the past 2.5 million years. In fact, this evolution often ran counter to the strong survival instincts inherited from our ancestors. Human thought can be divided into three major stages. Stage 1. Primitive thought. The first stage began around 10,000 years ago. This was the era of primitive thinking, when humans first began reflecting on their relationship with the wider universe. Yet survival remained the primary concern, and thought was guided largely by dogma. As nomadic hunters and gatherers settled into agricultural communities, they invented writing and developed early belief systems and religions. These were often born from a mix of imagination, fear of the unknown, and helplessness before natural forces. Stage 2. Philosophical thought. The second stage emerged about 3,000 years ago with the rise of philosophical inquiry. Here, human thought broke away from superstition, giving birth to philosophy, the systematic reflection on human behavior and the nature and causes of reality. Philosophical thought sought explanations that did not rely on imagined spirits or anthropomorphic gods. One of the earliest examples lies in the Upanishads, ancient Indian scriptures, that laid the foundation for Hindu philosophy. Stage 3. Scientific thought. The third stage is scientific thinking, which began roughly 500 years ago. Knowledge was no longer built on speculation or religious belief, but on systematic observation and experiment. Science allowed humans to study and explain natural phenomena through measurable methods, leading to the rapid growth of empirical knowledge. Widespread access to education further accelerated this progress, producing new generations of scientists. Despite these advances, science remains limited in its ability to answer fundamental questions. The fact that science cannot provide an explanation today does not mean it will never do so, but certain boundaries remain. Observational limits. For instance, Einstein's theory of relativity states that nothing can move faster than the speed of light. This means we may never observe events that occurred at light speed in the early universe. This limit is known as the particle horizon. Lost evidence. Much data has vanished over time. Countless fossils have been destroyed by geological processes, leaving us with incomplete evidence of early life forms, unverifiable hypotheses. Some theories, such as the existence of multiple universes, cannot be tested with current methods. Without access to these universes, such explanations remain beyond the reach of observation or experiment. Inherent mysteries. Even in natural sciences, certain laws remain unexplained. Physics can describe gravity, but not fully explain its nature. Isaac Newton himself believed gravity was a creation of God. Ultimately, the limitation may not be science's methods, but the capacity of the human mind itself. Science continues to strive toward answering life's most fundamental questions. How did the universe begin? How did human life evolve? For now, scientists can only develop theories to approximate explanations. Perhaps one day these mysteries will be solved. But at present it seems the scientific method itself, though powerful, remains bounded. Reading Cosmosapiens was both exhilarating and humbling. John Hans doesn't just recount scientific theories, he challenges them, questions their assumptions, and exposes their limitations. What struck me most was how the book never takes accepted knowledge for granted. Instead, it asks the uncomfortable but necessary questions. Where did matter come from? How did life arise from non-life? What makes human consciousness unique? For me, the power of this book lies in its honesty. Hans acknowledges the vast achievements of modern science, evolutionary biology, cosmology, genetics, while also reminding us that many of the biggest questions remain unanswered. Science has given us extraordinary progress, but it has not solved the mystery of existence. Another key insight I took from Cosmosapiens is the uniqueness of reflective consciousness. Unlike other animals, humans not only think but think about thinking. We ask, who am I, and why am I here? These questions have led to philosophy, religion, and science themselves. They also remind us that we are meaning-seeking creatures, not just biological machines. Closing the book, I felt a renewed sense of humility about the limits of human knowledge, but also a deep appreciation for the journey of inquiry. Cosmosapiens doesn't give final answers, perhaps no book can. Instead, it inspires us to keep asking, keep exploring, and keep reflecting on our place in the cosmos. If you want to challenge your mind and rethink what you thought you knew about the universe, I highly recommend reading Cosmosapiens by John Hans. You'll find the link below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me for more thought-provoking book reviews.